I've been living in this apartment building for about 2 years now. The building has exactly two washers and two dryers tucked away in a cramped basement room that smells like detergent and dampness. For 48 units, that's not exactly luxury, but it's what we've got. The laundry situation works on an honor system. Everyone's supposed to move their stuff when the cycle finishes, so the next person can use the machines. Most people are pretty good about it. We all work different schedules, so there's usually an unspoken understanding that we'll respect each other's time. Keyword being most people. My upstairs neighbor is a different story entirely. This guy moved in about 6 months ago, and from day one he's acted like he owns the place. He's one of those people who plays music too loud, leaves trash in the hallway, and somehow always manages to park his beat-up Honda in a spot that blocks everyone else from getting their cars out easily. But the laundry thing really got under my skin. The first few times it happened, I figured maybe he just forgot. We've all been there, right? You throw your clothes in, go back to your apartment, get distracted by Netflix or whatever, and suddenly it's 3 hours later. It happens. Except with him, it kept happening. I go down to do my weekly wash, and there would be his wet clothes sitting in the washer for who knows how long, starting to get that weird musty smell. Or his stuff would be done in the dryer for hours, taking up space while I'm standing there with a basket of dirty clothes and nowhere to put them. Sunday evening was my breaking point. I've been putting off laundry all weekend because I've been working double shifts at the restaurant where I wait tables. Sunday night is usually dead in the laundry room, so I figured it would be perfect timing. I hauled my overflowing basket down to the basement, only to find both washers occupied with his loads that had clearly been sitting there for hours. The clothes were cold and starting to smell funky. I walked back upstairs and knocked on his door. When he answered, he was holding a beer and had a video game controller in his other hand. I asked him politely if he could move his laundry since it had been done for a while and both washers were tied up. I explained that I really needed to get my washing done that night before work the next morning. He told me he'd get to it eventually, like it was no big deal. When I pressed him about it, explaining that both machines were occupied, he just shrugged and told me to take his stuff out myself if I needed to use the machines that badly. He said he didn't care if I handled his wet clothes. I was stunned. I told him I didn't really want to touch his wet, personal items and asked if he could just come down and move them himself. That's when he actually laughed at me. Not a friendly laugh either. A dismissive, condescending laugh that made my blood pressure spike. He said I was being way too uptight about the whole thing and that it was just laundry. He repeated that if I needed the machine, I should just take his stuff out and that it would solve the problem. Then he literally shut the door in my face while I was still standing there with my mouth open. I went back to my apartment fuming. Who does that? Who just expects their neighbors to handle their wet, dirty clothes because they can't be bothered to set a timer on their phone? I tried to let it go, but every time I thought about his smug face and that laugh, I got angry all over again. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Same scenario, except this time his clothes had been sitting in the dryer overnight. When I knocked on his door, he gave me the exact same response. He asked what the big deal was and told me to just take his stuff out if I needed to use the machine. I tried explaining that it was basic courtesy to move your stuff when it's done, but he just brushed me off. He said I was making a mountain out of a molehill and acted like I was the unreasonable one. That's when I decided to take his advice. He said to just take his stuff out if I needed to use the machine, so that's exactly what I started doing. But I figured if I was going to handle his laundry, I might as well be helpful and fold it for him too. The first time I folded everything backward. Shirts inside out, pants with the legs twisted, socks rolled into tight little balls that would take forever to untangle. I stacked it all neatly in his laundry basket and left it sitting on top of the dryer. A few days later, it happened again. This time, I got creative. I folded his jeans into triangular shapes like weird fabric origami. His t-shirts got folded into long, narrow strips. I took all his socks and tied them into elaborate knots that would take a puzzle master to figure out. The third time was my masterpiece. He'd left his bedding in there overnight, including several pillowcases. I turned each pillowcase into a tight tube and stacked them on top of each other like a tower of fabric Pringles. It was actually kind of impressive from an engineering standpoint. For his regular clothes, I decided to play Tetris. I packed everything into one of his laundry baskets so tightly and in such a specific order that he'd have to remove every single item to get to anything at the bottom. Shirts wedged under pants, wedged under towels, wedged under more shirts. It was like a three-dimensional puzzle. I never saw his reaction to any of this directly, but I could hear him stomping around his apartment at weird hours, and once I'm pretty sure I heard him swearing loudly about something. The fourth time I had to move his stuff, I really went all out. I folded his dress shirts into tiny squares that would need extensive ironing to ever look normal again. I braided the drawstrings from his sweatpants together into one long rope. I even managed to fold his fitted sheet into something that resembled a paper airplane. But that turned out to be the last time I needed to do it, because suddenly my upstairs neighbor developed an amazing ability to keep track of time. Now, every time I walk past the laundry room, I see him down there right when the buzzer goes off, ready to move his stuff immediately. He hasn't said a word to me about the creative folding job, and I haven't said anything to him about his sudden punctuality. But every time we pass each other in the hallway, he looks away really quickly. Now other people in the building can actually use the machines when they need them. Turns out I wasn't the only one getting frustrated with his laundry hogging habits. The woman from the second floor stopped me last week and thanked me for whatever I did to fix the situation. She said she'd been having the same problem and was grateful someone finally did something about it. I'm a full-time student working on my nursing degree, and I also work part-time at a local clinic to help pay for school. I still live at home because rent in our area is crazy expensive, and honestly, it made financial sense while I finished my studies. My parents have always been strict, but I figured once I became an adult, things would change. I was wrong. Every single time I want to go anywhere, it's like preparing for a job interview. My mom sits me down with this serious expression and starts asking me where exactly I'm going. When I tell her I'm just hanging out with friends, she wants to know which friends, what their full names are, where they live, and what their parents do for work. I remind her that she already knows these people, but it doesn't matter. Then she asks what time I'll be home, and when I say probably around 10, she tells me 10 is too late and I need to make it 9:30. She also insists that I text them every hour to check in. This happens every time. Every single time, and if I'm even 5 minutes late, my phone starts buzzing with texts and calls. When I get home, my dad is waiting by the door with his arms crossed, ready to lecture me about responsibility and respect. Meanwhile, my younger brother, who's 18, gets to do whatever he wants. Last month, he disappeared for 3 days straight. When he finally came home, my parents casually asked where he'd been and if he'd had fun. That was it. No lecture, no grounding, no 20 questions about who he was with or what he was doing. He regularly stays out until 3 in the morning, skips his college classes, and once came home so drunk, he threw up on the front lawn. My parents just laughed it off and told funny stories about their own college days. Last weekend, my friend was having her 21st birthday party, and she specifically asked me to be there. I knew if I asked my parents, I'd get the usual interrogation followed by a bunch of reasons why I shouldn't go. They'd probably say it was too late, or they didn't know the other people there well enough, or some other excuse. So I made a decision. I waited until my parents went to bed, then quietly left the house. I texted them that I was safe and would be home later, but I didn't specify where I was going. I figured I was an adult, I was being responsible by letting them know I was okay, and I deserved one night to just be normal. The party was amazing. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually relax and have fun without constantly checking my phone or worrying about getting home by some arbitrary curfew. We played games, talked, laughed, and I even met some new people who might become good friends. I got home around midnight, which honestly isn't even that late for a weekend. But when I walked through the door, both my parents were sitting in the living room waiting for me like some kind of tribunal. My dad immediately demanded to know where I'd been. When I reminded him that I'd texted them I was safe, my mom said that wasn't an answer and accused me of sneaking out like some kind of criminal. They told me they'd been worried sick and had almost called the police. I pointed out that I was 21 years old and didn't need permission to leave the house, but my mom shot back that when I lived under their roof, I had to follow their rules. Then my dad dropped the bomb. I was grounded for 2 weeks with no going out and no friends over. 21 years old, and they're trying to ground me like I'm a teenager who got caught sneaking cigarettes. I told them I was an adult who worked, went to school, and paid for my own car and phone. My mom told me not to raise my voice at them, but I was just getting started. I brought up my brother and how he disappears for days without them saying anything. My dad said that was different, and when I asked how, my mom claimed my brother was more mature and could handle himself. I reminded them that their supposedly mature son had failed 2 classes last semester and gotten a DUI last month that they'd covered up. My dad said they weren't discussing my brother, and this was about my behavior. I exploded and told them that my behavior included getting a degree, working, never being in trouble, yet they treated me like some kind of delinquent. My mom insisted I had disrespected them by sneaking out, and I shot back that I wouldn't have to sneak out if they treated me like the adult I was. The argument went on for another 20 minutes. They kept saying I was being disrespectful and ungrateful, while I kept pointing out the obvious double standard. Finally, I realized nothing I said was going to change their minds. I told them that if they wanted to treat me like a child, I'd act like one by packing a bag and leaving. My dad said I couldn't just walk out, and I told him to watch me. I went upstairs, threw some clothes and essentials into a backpack, and called my friend who'd had the party. I asked if her couch was still available for a couple nights, and she said of course and asked what happened. I told her I'd explain when I got there. When I came back downstairs with my bag, my parents were shocked. My mom said I couldn't be serious about leaving, and I told her I was 21 years old and absolutely serious. My dad warned me not to expect to come crawling back when I realized how good I had it at home. I told him I wasn't crawling anywhere and was walking out with my dignity intact. And I did. I stayed at my friend's place for 2 nights, and it was honestly the most peaceful 2 days I'd had in months. No constant questions, no lectures, no having to justify every decision I made. But of course, my parents couldn't let it go. My phone was constantly buzzing with texts and voicemails. My mom texted that I'd embarrassed the entire family. My dad left a voicemail saying my behavior was completely unacceptable and I was humiliating them. Another text from my mom said people were asking where I was and they didn't know what to tell them. My dad texted that I could come home when I was ready to apologize and start acting like a responsible adult. The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted me to apologize for acting like an adult, while they continued treating me like a child. On the second night, my brother actually showed up at my friend's place. Apparently, he'd gotten tired of listening to our parents complain. He told me they wanted me to come home, and I said I knew what they wanted. He admitted he knew they were harder on me than him, which I said was the understatement of the year. He said they were worried about me, and I asked if they'd been worried when he disappeared for 3 days last month. He didn't have an answer for that. He suggested I just come home and apologize to make it easier on everyone. I asked why I should apologize for wanting to be treated with basic respect, and he said that's how families work sometimes. I told him that's how dysfunctional families work. The next morning I decided to go back home but not to apologize. I went back to get more of my things and to have one final conversation with my parents. When I walked in, they were both sitting at the kitchen table. My dad asked if I was ready to apologize, and I said no, but I was ready to talk like adults. My mom said I owed them an apology for the way I'd acted. I told them I owed them an explanation, but not an apology. I explained that I was 21 years old, worked, went to school, was responsible with money, didn't do drugs, and didn't get in trouble. Yet they treated me like some kind of problem child while giving my brother a free pass on everything. I pointed at my brother again and gave them an ultimatum: either start treating me like the adult I was, or I'd find somewhere else to live permanently. My dad said I couldn't afford to live on my own, and I told him he had a choice to make. He could keep trying to control every aspect of my life and lose me completely, or start respecting that I was an adult who'd proven she could make good decisions. The room went quiet for a long moment. Finally, my mom said, "They just worried about me." I told her I understood that, but worrying didn't give them the right to treat me like a prisoner in my own home. My dad asked what I wanted from them, and I explained I wanted them to trust me. I wanted to be able to go out with friends without a full interrogation and have the same freedom they gave my brother. My mom said it was different with boys, and I reminded her it was 2024, and that excuse didn't work anymore. After another long silence, my dad surprised me by admitting that maybe they had been a little harder on me. It wasn't a full admission, but it was progress. I told them I didn't want to fight and just wanted to be treated fairly. We talked for another hour, and while they didn't completely cave on everything, they did agree to ease up on some of the rules. No more hourly check-ins, no more interrogations about every friend, and definitely no more groundings for a 21-year-old. It's been a week since I moved back home and things are slowly getting better. They still worry and they still ask questions, but it feels more like normal parental concern instead of controlling behavior. My brother even admitted that he thought they were being unfair to me, which was nice to hear. My family doesn't have much money. My mom works 2 jobs to keep food on our table. My clothes are hand-me-downs from my older cousin, and my sneakers are falling apart. But my mom taught me that respect comes from how you treat people, not what you wear. Our school didn't have a principal for 2 months after the old one retired. The substitute was nice and let us focus on learning. Last Monday, we heard a new principal got hired and would start right away. Kids said he came from some expensive private school and was really strict. I was in third period history class discussing civil rights when the door opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in. He looked about 50 with slicked back hair and acted like he was better than everyone. The teacher introduced him as our new principal who was there to observe. He barely nodded at the teacher and started walking around like he owned the place. He looked at each of us like he was judging us. He stopped near my friend, who sits in the back. My friend is really nice, but his family has even less money than mine. His shirt was too big and his jeans had a patch where his mom fixed a hole. The principal pointed at my friend and asked his name. My friend quietly said it was Marcus. The principal asked if Marcus thought his clothes were okay for school. Everyone went silent. Marcus was embarrassed and sinking into his seat. Marcus whispered that these were his school clothes. The principal said the outfit wasn't acceptable. He said it looked like work clothes and the school had standards. My blood started boiling. This guy had been here 5 minutes and was already picking on students. Everyone looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. The principal kept going and said maybe Marcus's parents needed to learn that education required proper clothes. He said they should spend less on other things and buy decent clothes for their kid. I couldn't take it anymore. I said excuse me to get his attention. He turned and looked annoyed that someone interrupted him. He snapped and asked what I wanted. I said I didn't think it was right to judge students by their clothes. I told him Marcus was one of our hardest workers, and his family situation wasn't the principal's business. The room got so quiet you could hear everything. The principal got angry and I knew I messed up. He told me to stand up right now. I stood up with my heart racing, but I wouldn't back down. He asked my name, but I refused. I said I wouldn't give him my name so he could get back at me later, but what he did was wrong. The principal exploded with anger. He asked if I thought I could talk to him like that and called me a punk. He said he'd show me respect. Before I could move, he walked over and grabbed my shoulder. Instead of just grabbing me, he shoved me hard and I stumbled backward. When I tried to catch my balance, he kicked my leg and I fell into the desk behind me. The whole class made shocked noises. Students started pulling out phones. The teacher said he couldn't touch students like that. The principal said kids needed to learn respect. He claimed that back in his day they knew how to handle mouthy kids. I got up and told him he just attacked a student and it was illegal. He laughed at the word attack and said I was being disrespectful and he was keeping order. What he didn't know was 3 students recorded everything when he grabbed me. One student sent the video to their older sibling who worked at the news station. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. Angry parents jammed the school's phone lines. By the end of the day, the superintendent came with 2 cops and a lawyer. They called me to the office with my teacher and the students who saw everything. We told them what happened while the principal sat there, getting pale when he realized he was in trouble. The superintendent told the principal that on his first day, he attacked a student, bullied another student about his family's money situation, and made the classroom hostile. She said it was completely unacceptable. The principal tried to defend himself and said I was disrespectful and needed to learn a lesson. The police officer cut him off and said they watched the video. The cop told him that grabbing, shoving, and kicking a minor was attack no matter what the student said. The principal tried to argue that he was just disciplining a difficult student, but the evidence was clear. The video showed everything, including his mean comments about Marcus's clothes and him hitting me. He got desperate and said this was ridiculous. He said they hired him to bring discipline and asked if this was how they thanked him. The superintendent said they hired him to be a leader, not a bully. She told him his contract was over immediately. When they walked him out was when things got good. The dismissal bell rang and hundreds of students were in the hallways going to their next classes. Word had spread about what happened, and everyone knew what was going on. When the police walked him through the main hallway in handcuffs, the whole school watched. Some students clapped and others recorded with their phones. The man who walked into our classroom that morning acting like he owned everything was now being walked through school like a criminal. Even in handcuffs, he tried to say it was all a misunderstanding and that we kids didn't know respect. Nobody listened to him anymore. The charges stuck. He got convicted for attacking a minor and lost his teaching license forever. The school district paid my family money that helped my mom pay bills and even buy me new clothes, though I told her she didn't need to. Marcus thanked me the next day for standing up to the principal. He said nobody ever defended him like that before. That meant more to me than any money. I go to the same gym regularly. I usually go after work around 6 p.m., which means I'm there until about 7:30 p.m. most nights. The routine works well since I live alone and don't have to rush home to anyone. After clocking out, I headed straight to the gym. I threw on my favorite workout shirt, a bright red Nike athletic tee that I'd gotten on sale months ago. It's comfortable, breathable, and one of the better gym shirts I own. My workout went well. I did my usual routine of 30 minutes on the treadmill followed by some weight training. Nothing too intense, just enough to stay in shape and clear my head after a long day. By the time I finished, it was almost 8 p.m. and I realized I needed to grab some groceries on the way home. My fridge was practically empty, except for some leftover takeout and a questionable carton of milk. The grocery store I chose was one of those mid-sized chains, nothing too upscale but decent enough. I've been there plenty of times before though, usually on weekends when I had more time to browse. When I walked through the automatic doors, I noticed the employees were wearing bright red polo shirts with the store logo. I didn't think much of it at the time. I grabbed a shopping cart and started making my way through the aisles. I needed the basics like milk, bread, some frozen dinners for busy nights, and maybe some snacks. I was in the cereal aisle comparing prices on different brands when I heard someone clearing their throat loudly behind me. I turned around to see a woman in her 50s standing there with an annoyed expression. She was holding a bag of rice and looked like she'd been waiting for my attention for a while, even though I'd only just noticed her. She demanded that I take her expired bag of rice and go get her a fresh one from the back. Her tone was sharp and impatient, like she was talking to someone who worked for her. I told her politely that I didn't work at the store. She immediately accused me of lying and said that I was wearing the employee uniform. I tried to explain that it was just a Nike workout shirt, pointing out that I had clearly just come from the gym and was sweaty. She refused to listen and kept saying that I was an employee trying to get out of helping her. Getting frustrated with her stubbornness, I literally turned my shirt around to show her the giant Nike swoosh logo printed on the back. I pointed out that this probably wasn't something the store would put on their employee uniforms. She actually stopped and stared at the logo for a moment, squinting like she was trying to make sense of what she was seeing. For a brief second, I thought she might realize her mistake and apologize. Instead, she said that I shouldn't be wearing red if I didn't work there, like I had somehow violated some unspoken rule of grocery shopping. I asked her if she was being serious. She told me it was confusing for customers and that I was basically false advertising by wearing that color. I asked what exactly I was advertising. She got defensive and said I was being smart with her, then threatened to report me to my manager. I told her to go ahead and explain to the manager that a customer in a Nike shirt had refused to help her. She walked off toward the front of the store complaining about inconsiderate people and dress codes. I continued shopping, trying to put the weird encounter out of my mind. About 10 minutes later, while I was picking out some frozen pizzas, I heard a commotion near the customer service desk. Curious, I peeked around the corner of the aisle. There she was, the same woman, waving her arms around while talking to a young employee who looked like he couldn't be more than 19. The poor kid was nodding politely while she went on about something. I couldn't hear everything, but I could tell she was complaining about an employee who had refused to help her and been completely unprofessional about it. An older manager appeared and asked what the problem was. She explained that an employee had refused to help her and been extremely rude. She pointed in my general direction, so I ducked back behind the aisle to avoid getting dragged into the mess. The manager asked her to point out which employee she was talking about. There was a pause while she looked around, clearly searching for me. She described someone in a red shirt of average height who had just been there moments before. The manager explained that all employees were accounted for at their stations and asked for a more specific description. After another pause, she mentioned that the person had been wearing a Nike shirt. The manager pointed out that their employees don't wear Nike shirts, but rather polo shirts with the store logo. The conversation went on for a few more minutes, but I'd heard enough. I quickly finished my shopping and headed to a checkout lane far away from the customer service desk. When I was bagging my groceries, she walked past my lane. Our eyes met for just a moment. I gave her a polite nod and smile. She hurried out of the store without saying anything. The cashier, who had apparently seen part of the earlier drama, just shook her head and made a comment about how some people can be difficult to deal with. When I drove home that night, I laughed about the whole situation. I mean, what kind of logic is it that wearing a certain color automatically makes you an employee somewhere? By that reasoning, I should be able to walk into any hospital and start performing surgery just by wearing scrubs. But the thing that really got to me was her demand that I shouldn't wear red if I don't work there. Like she had some kind of authority over what colors people can wear in public. The entitlement was just mind-blowing. I still shop at that same grocery store, and I've seen that woman a few more times since then. She always avoids eye contact now and gives me a wide berth in the aisles. My brother had been living with me for about 6 months at that point. He was supposed to be helping with rent and groceries, but somehow I always ended up covering most of the expenses. He had this job literally 2 minutes from our apartment, same street, just a few buildings down, while I was stuck commuting for hours to a tech company about an hour and a half away. He could roll out of bed and be at his desk in 5 minutes. The commute was brutal. 3 to 3.5 hours round trip every single day. I'd leave the house at 7 in the morning and wouldn't get back until after 8:30 at night. When I dragged myself through the front door, I was completely drained. What I didn't know at the time was that my brother had been talking to our mom behind my back. He'd call her up and paint me as this lazy, inconsiderate roommate who never helped around the house. Meanwhile, I was the one buying groceries, cleaning, and basically keeping the place running. Our mom only heard his side of the story, so she'd call me up and give me these long lectures about being more responsible and considerate of my brother. My brother would constantly ask me to pick up things like milk on my way home from work. When I'd suggest he could grab it, since he passed 3 different stores on his way back from his job, he brushed me off saying he was busy after work and that I was better at shopping anyway. This became our routine. I'd get these requests throughout the day, and somehow I'd always end up stopping somewhere on my way home. Even though every decent store was closed by the time I got back, I'd have to go to the overpriced convenience store that stayed open until midnight, paying double for everything. We had plenty of options nearby too. 3 small supermarkets within a 5-minute walk, a bakery right across from our building, and a big supermarket that was 20 minutes on foot. or 2 minutes by train. But somehow shopping always fell to me. One week I've been working overtime every day. My boss had dumped this huge project on my team, and we were scrambling to meet the deadline. I was getting home past 9 every night, completely exhausted. On Wednesday, I noticed we were running low on toilet paper. Thursday morning rolled around, and I saw there were maybe 2 rolls left. I told my brother that we were almost out of toilet paper. He just acknowledged it casually and went back to his cereal like it was no big deal. I waited for him to say he'd pick some up, but nothing. So I decided to conduct a little experiment. I wasn't going to mention it again. Friday came and went. Still no toilet paper run. By Saturday morning we were down to the last roll. My brother was lounging in bed until noon while I did laundry and cleaned the kitchen. Around 2 in the afternoon my brother emerged from his room and asked what was for lunch. I told him he could make whatever he wanted for himself. He complained that I was the better cook, but I said I was busy that day. He grumbled something and made himself a sandwich. I spent the afternoon reading and deliberately avoiding any shopping trips. When evening came, I noticed him checking his phone a lot and tidying up the living room. Sunday morning, I was having my coffee when I heard the front door open. My brother came in with someone I'd never seen before. He introduced his college friend who was visiting for the weekend. The friend seemed nice enough. We chatted for a bit, and then he excused himself to use the bathroom. That's when things got interesting. From down the hall, I heard the friend calling out, asking where they kept the toilet paper. There was a pause, then my brother's voice, slightly panicked, asking me where the toilet paper was. He was looking at me expectantly, like I was supposed to have some magical answer. I told him the toilet paper had always been in the bathroom cabinet, and if it wasn't there, that meant there wasn't any. He asked what I meant by there not being any, and I explained that we were out and someone needed to buy more. The color drained from his face. His friend was still waiting in the bathroom, probably wondering what was taking so long. My brother demanded to know why I hadn't bought any. I asked him why he hadn't bought any, pointing out that he walked past stores every day. He said that I always handled the shopping, but I explained that was because he never did it, not because it was my job. He stood there for a moment, realizing he had no argument. His friend called out again, asking if everything was okay. My brother told him to give him a minute. He grabbed his jacket and keys, telling me that this was embarrassing and asking why I would do this to him. I asked him what exactly I had done, not rid his mind about what he wanted me to buy. He walked out quickly. I could hear his friend in the bathroom, probably trying to figure out what was happening. I knocked on the door and explained that my brother had run to the store and would be back in 5 minutes. His friend thanked me. When my brother returned with the toilet paper, his face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. He avoided eye contact with both me and his friend for the rest of the visit. Later that evening, after his friend left, he tried to start a fight about it. He complained that what I did was completely unfair since I knew we needed toilet paper. I pointed out that he knew it too and had known since Wednesday. He said that shopping was my thing, but I corrected him, saying it became my thing because he refused to do it. He argued that he worked too, and I reminded him that his job was 2 minutes away while I spent 3 hours a day commuting, yet he couldn't walk 5 minutes to buy toilet paper. He didn't have an answer for that. His friend kept asking him questions about why he didn't just grab some after work, clearly confused about why it was such a big deal. The next week, my brother started doing his own grocery runs. Our mom stopped calling me with lectures about being more considerate too. I guess my brother's stories changed once he realized he might actually have to take care of himself. All I did was stop enabling him, and his own laziness ended up embarrassing him in front of his friend.